The guy, intelligent falling. Joe Brand.
Is it when you see Michael Winner coming towards you? And you deliberately trip so that you can squash them? That would be intelligent falling.
A very good example. You really got it into the Winster, haven't you?
I have.
Yeah.
Is it because he's not returning your calls, Joe? Is that what it is? Let go of it.
Take me out to dinner.
Is intelligent falling what Ronaldo does in the penalty area?
No, it's a kind of way of trying to demonstrate what scientists mean by theory. Because, as you probably know, they have in America this idea that it's equivalent to teach intelligent design as it is to teach the theory of evolution. Because they say, well, the theory of evolution is only a theory, so why can't we suggest our theory? Which is a misunderstanding of what a scientist means by theory. That's what...
You've lost me.
Yeah. Well, you've heard of the theory of evolution.
Yes.
And you've heard of intelligent design?
No.
Well, in America, religious people who decide that evolution is contrary to what the Bible says about the creation, they want children to believe that all creation was made by an intelligent being, i.e. God.
The universe is designed by something.
Yeah, and their name for it, rather than saying just believe the Bible, is intelligent design. They say
right.
it's the theory of evolution, so why can't we have a theory of intelligent design? And they can both be taught in the same way. And all I'm getting at is that actually theory has a rather specific meaning in science. It's not the same as guess. It's not even the same as hypothesis. This is what the OED calls a theory. A statement of what are held to be general laws, principles, or causes of something known or observed. I.e., that's not a guess. The theory of evolution is, as far as any biologist or zoologist would say, is true. I mean, it is supported by facts.
So what was intelligent falling? It was...
Intelligent falling is saying, well, Newton had a theory of gravity, but it was overturned by Einstein's theory of gravity, so why can't we suggest our theory, which is intelligent falling?
Isn't the point partly that different theories are supported by different amounts of evidence? So, for example, David Icke has a theory that the royal family are all 7-foot green lizards in 6-foot human skin suits.
Yes.
And he doesn't have a lot of evidence for that theory. Whereas the sort of evolution is supported by a lot of evidence. And if you want to question a theory, then you should do so by challenging its evidence rather than by...
The intelligent design believers, what do they think they put in their cars?
It is a problem. I mean, it's a hard position to be a fundamentalist. On the one hand, you have to forgive people, on the other hand, you have to take their eye out. It's a bit difficult to know which one you're supposed to do at any one moment.
Well, if Michael Winner's around...
Yeah.
Yes.
to make a decision.
I've got this fantasy of Michael Winner sitting down saying, oh, it's Friday, what shall I do? I know, I'll watch QI. Joe Brand's on, she's my favourite.
And the disappointment when he sees you being...
So he won't be disappointed.
No, perhaps he won't, perhaps he won't. So there we are, yes. The fact is, evolution and gravity may be theories, but they work perfectly well in practice. Describe the symptoms of either drapetomania or diasthesia ethiopica. Who the hell is that?
I don't know, but that's what the girl's thinking as well.
They're all thinking I would, aren't they? I mean, it's nothing to do, I have to say, with Gregory House. We're in the 1850s, just before the Civil War, which is a clue. Drapetomania was a diagnosis of a quite inexplicable outbreak of a sort of mental failing that happened amongst the slave population.
Oh, were they singing?
No.
Were they singing cheerful songs?
Even more inexplicable. This was a doctor called Samuel Cartwright who coined the phrase drapetomania to explain the mental disorder displayed by slaves who wanted to run away.
Right.
Surely.
What? I know. He said it was as much a disease of the mind as any other species of mental alienation, and much more curable. He thought it was caused by slaves being given too much authority and freedom.
Do you know what? I think my husband's got drapetomania. He's always having a crack at running away.
Shackles.
Shackles is
the answer, that's right.
He's got a massive bungee rope.
Yeah. He claimed that slaves should have the desire to run away beaten out of them.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's always the answer with the slaves, wasn't it?
Was that both, Pat? What was the first one? Drapetomania.
Yeah.
And the
from
second
Greek.
one was what?
The second one I'll tell you about, this is diaesthesia ethiopica. It's characterised by an aversion to doing slave labour. Again, what a peculiar thing. Other symptoms include rascality and not taking care of property. His description was to put the patient to some kind of hard work in the open air and sunshine.
You do get quite a lot of these weird diagnoses, though, even now. In Russia and in China, they had political mania, which was convincing your colleagues and friends of the need for political change. And in China, political mania has got symptoms like carrying banners, shouting slogans, and expressing views on important domestic and international political matters.
Yes, you're right, I know. The Russians famously, through the 60s and 70s, had the psychology sort of turned backwards, and paranoia was defined as a yearning for justice.
Truth and justice are commonly found in the personality of the paranoid delusional, I think is what...
That's the phrase they used.
Yeah.
Well, there is a book which is well known to anybody who studies mental health, which is called the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which goes through various editions.
A lot of it is cock.
Well, and indeed, a lot of it is cock, but unfortunately it's very important cock because, for example, so if you're suing your employer because you claim you have a medical condition and whatever, it is the DSM which defines whatever supposed mental disorder you have, and they go through current editions. We're at 4 at the moment, aren't we? They're going to be...
It's coming up for 5.
Coming up for 5 in 2013. And people submit to it their idea of a condition, and some of them are accepted and some of them aren't. And we have up some for you which are under consideration or might have been suggested. And I wanted to see if you can tell what they are. Sluggish cognitive tempo disorder.
Can't dance. That just people
Guilty
who
feet
can't...
have got no rhythm.
Yeah.
Being a student.
Basically, I mean, your Daily Mail journalists would naturally write off, as they do almost any mental condition, as a shabby excuse for a character flaw. But in this case, when you read the descriptions of the symptoms of sluggish cognitive tempo disorder, the basic word you come up with is laziness. It is basically laziness. Relational disorder.
Unpleasantness.
Yeah. An inability to get on.
Ryan Giggs.
Sorry?
Well,
Ryan Giggs has got that.
Yeah, Brian Giggs is not getting on with
He
people.
gets on with some people, but they're usually married to other people.
Yes. So, anyway, negativistic personality disorder.
Not being very nice.
Well, it's being negativistic about something, whining.
Jeremy Paxman.
Whining and complaining. Intermittent explosive disorder.
That's flatulence.
Well, it would, but as this is the DSM, basically adult tantrums, people who lose their temper very, very quickly. And now, the point is, one can laugh at these, but there are some things that are obviously real, that produce terrible conditions, mental conditions, and that is well known. And then, somewhere along the line, there are things to do with concentration disorders and compulsion disorders, which seem so limited that you think, is that worth putting in a book? And do you need special treatment for that? Where do you draw the line, I suppose? I'm asking, doctor, do tell us.
Partly it's 'cause some people want to be pathologised and have a label.
Yes.
And sometimes it's about flogging a treatment. I mean, female sexual dysfunction, for example, started being pushed at the time that various companies were trying to get licences for things like Viagra for the 50% of the population who are unlucky enough not to have a penis. Along with that...
Joe's got loads of penises, but they're all in a drawer.
But FSD was about medicalising it and saying that desire is a matter of clitoral blood flow imaging and nitric oxide molecules in your body rather
I think
than...
that might have been the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. Clitoral blood flow imaging.
.com.
No, that is a dirty book.
Yes. Well, no, that's true. I'm pretty sure that if I had been born later, I would have been diagnosed with having attention deficit disorder and been given, Ritalin, one of those drugs. As it was, I was called a tosser and expelled from lots of schools. Now, part of me thinks I was a tosser. I couldn't concentrate. I was extremely aggravating to all those around me, and I was expelled from schools, and I was a damn nuisance. But it's probably true that I did have something in my brain was different to others. And some people will always want to see that as a moral character thing, which is under your control, And they will do it rigidly and refuse to accept that there's a medical
But the thing
condition
is,
for it.
it's not only moral, is it? It's social and cultural as well.
Yeah.
You know, because 50 years ago, people who were gay were being given electric shocks
Yes.
or whatever they were to cure them
Yes.
of that illness. So as history moves on, you medicalise different sorts of behaviour, don't you?
Yeah. Well, there you are. That's it. Some psychologists seem to have disorder naming compulsion disorder, which is not exactly fatal, but who was the last British monarch to be deliberately killed?
Was it one of the ones that got beheaded?
No. You've managed to avoid saying Charles I, who most people would
Yeah, only
think.
because I couldn't bloody remember.
It happened in Norfolk. So where would that likely be if it was a monarch?
Sandringham.
At Sandringham.
Oh, it's the Queen's dad.
No, not the Queen's dad, the Queen's grandfather.
Right.
This is King George V, who was the grandfather of our current monarch. There he is, looking spookily like his cousin Nicholas Tsar Alexander. And it's a attested story by the man who actually did it. It's quite extraordinary that it isn't better known, really. In 1936, he was at Sandringham, feeling unwell. On the 15th of January, he retired to his bedroom. By the 20th, he was comatose and clearly dying, but still clinging to life. And this presented his doctor, a man called Lord Dawson, a bit of a problem. In Dawson's opinion, the world at large would be better served by hearing of the King's death in the morning papers rather than by him lingering on a little bit longer and it being in what he sniffily referred to as the evening journals. So, he decided to force the issue. He wrote a very famous bulletin on the back of a menu card, which was telephoned to the BBC. The life of the King is moving peacefully to its close. He then went up to the bedroom, and this, according to his own diary, is what he did. I therefore decided to determine the end and injected morphia, 3/4 of a grain, and shortly afterwards cocaine, 1 grain,
Lucky old king.
into the distended jugular vein. I did it myself because it was obvious that Sister B, the King's nurse, was disturbed by the procedure.
So I injected Sister B as well.
But essentially, isn't that what a speedball is, isn't it? He's basically gone the same way as John Belushi. It's, he gave him a speedball of morphia and cocaine.
And he told the family, did he? Or...
Well, he wrote it in his diary, and this was revealed in 1986.
Treason.
Well, it was quite extraordinary. And the weird thing is, being a Lord, he was in the House of Lords, and not long afterwards he voted against euthanasia in a euthanasia debate. But he said, I'm not opposed to euthanasia per se, not having just killed the king, not surprising. I just felt it should be left to the discretion of doctors, not anybody else. But there we are.
Or a doctor.
Or myself, basically. Now for a bizarre illness. What would you call a man who eats literally everything?
Winner.
Well, everything, like pens and...
Yes,
clips
basically,
and
yeah, polyphagism. It's also known as pica, an excessive appetite, often for non-nutritious substances, coal, clay, chalk, nuts, bolts, batteries, soil, and so on. It's a very exaggerated version of what can sometimes happen in pregnancy. I don't know. Did you get any weird appetite things when you were pregnant?
Yeah, I ate a bit less.
Some animals suffer from it. In horses, it's called depraved appetite. But the most extreme example we can come across was a man called Tarare, who was a Frenchman in the late 18th century, and he lived a shortish life. He was abandoned by his family as a child because they just couldn't afford the food that he ate. And after working as a street entertainer, swallowing stones and live animals, he became a soldier. And they decided to test his appetite, and he obliged, and he ate a meal intended for 15 people in a single sitting. He tore apart and ate, without chewing, live cats, snakes, lizards, and puppies. And so they thought maybe he'd be a useful spy, so they gave him things to swallow to go behind enemy. They were at war with Prussia. But he was caught first time and...
He'd be a good spy. Why would he... He'd rather draw attention to himself, though. Eating everything.
But they thought you could just swallow some box with military secrets in it, basically. So that when he was searched, he would have nothing. That was their theory, anyway. So he was then put on a diet in a military hospital, and he would scavenge for offal in gutters. He would escape from the hospital in rubbish heaps outside butchers' shops.
Offal in gutters?
Yes. and outside butcher shops. You
Oh,
know.
I see. What, just someone had gone, oh, don't
Bits
like
of
the look
guts.
of that liver. And...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he attempted to drink the blood of other patients and eat the corpses in the hospital morgue.
You know who's like that, don't you? You need to say it anymore, do I?
Anyway, yeah, he was eventually ejected from the hospital under suspicion.